Hello. In my second video, I was working on a collaborative proposal for the organization Invisible Children and the facet of that being Schools for Schools. And when I found out about this Project for Awesome thing, I wanted to talk about that again. The organization is called Invisible Children, and its goal is to stop the influence of the Lord's Resistance Army in Central Africa. So I feel like I should start by telling you what the LRA is. In 1986, there was a civil war in Uganda, and it was kind of because Uganda reunited and northern Uganda's economy and living situation was so far worse off than southern Uganda's, and that goes back to colonial times. So it's the 1980s. There's this chaos within the country, and this man named Joseph Kony joins the LRA and he rises to power in it. This is when it actually becomes like influential, I guess. So he says he wants to overthrow the government in northern Uganda and replace it with one based on the Ten Commandments. And the people really supported that. But he started to lose support, and the LRA started, like, its primary concern was survival. Then it started committing these heinous crimes. What they would do is they would go into villages, enter people's homes in the middle of the night, steal their children, and a lot of times what they would do is have the kids either kill their parents or mutilate their family members in some way. Like, they cut off their lips, noses. So that kind of made it where the kids didn't have anywhere to return to. So then the kids were forced into slavery, either as a sex slave or a slave soldier. A lot of people were displaced during this time. There were these big sessions of night commuting where children would leave their homes in the middle of the night and they would go live in abandoned buildings, and it was like their method of dodging the LRA. And this started 26 years ago. It was just consistent displacement. Now the civil war in Uganda is over, and the LRA is no longer active in northern Uganda. So a lot of people wonder, what's Invisible Children doing? Because a lot of what Invisible Children did during the civil war in Uganda was write letters, kind of gather awareness. People wrote to Joseph Kony himself. There were a couple peace talks with Joseph Kony that were set up, but he didn't attend any of them. And what's happened is the LRA has moved to Central Africa, kind of like South Sudan, Central African Republic, and the Congo. So it's more active there. In the past 2 years alone, the LRA has been responsible for the death of 2,000 people, the abduction of 3,000 people, and the displacement of 450,000 people. I mean, obviously it's still a major issue. Invisible Children wants to kind of raise the standard of living in northern Uganda. If you check out their website, you can see all the different things they're doing. They're doing one thing called Schools for Schools. What that is it's the attempt to consistently raise standards of education in northern Uganda. The way they're going about that is they're building facilities, supplying academic tools, introducing new technologies, training educators, and then ensuring that basic necessities like water and shelter are met. We've talked a little bit about how the Okoli people have been displaced and they were living in refugee camps. And these refugee camps were set up by non-governmental organizations. So the civil war in Uganda went on for 20-some years, and there were people who were living in these refugee camps for all of their life. Now there are adults who have never learned how to not be dependent on others. More than that, the villages that they're returning to are desolate. Their farmlands are overgrown, their homes are overgrown. They don't really remember where property lines were, so there are a lot of civil disputes. There's also no schools or health services. That's why Invisible Children is really focusing on what can be done in northern Uganda. So Invisible Children, I feel, is really important because they are trying to do something to improve the living standards for the Okoli people in northern Uganda whose lives were completely disrupted by the Civil War and the Lord's Resistance Army. And they've been living with this terror for 26 years. There are people who grew up with this terror. And also, you know, the Lord's Resistance Army, still active, just different location. And so I'm in big support of invisible children, and that's my project for Awesome video.